Bismillahirrahmanirrahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Peace and love, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Brother Ali. Welcome back to the Travelers Podcast. Thank you for listening to this podcast. This is something I've wanted to do for a very long time. I got exposed to this when I was a little kid because, first of all, my grandfather was a journalist. He actually taught journalism and he actually wrote a textbook in Spanish in Nicaragua in the 60s when he was living there and teaching journalism. So it's something that I always loved. But when I was a little kid, because me being albino and living in these and moving around and stuff like that, I experienced what now I know is called bullying. But I would have anxiety about going to school the next day. Like I would not want to go to school. And I would have ulcers and stomach pains and all this kind of stuff. And so at night, I would sit up and listen to talk radio. And people are talking about, I'm 7, 8 years old. People are talking about things I have no idea what they're even talking about. There was something about people speaking to each other that I really love. I'm also partially blind, so I can't really take visual cues as well as most people do. But people speaking and the texture of their voice in conversation, particularly, really means a lot to me. There's one level that you get from your favorite artist when they're rhyming or when they're singing. Somebody like Minister Farrakhan that I grew up listening to his speeches. When Minister Farrakhan was on the Donahue show, learned a whole new side of this man that I admired so much. His responses when people would challenge him or congratulate him, the amount of thought that he would give to things, or sometimes he would respond and it required no thought. You learn so much from those intangible things. And to me, that's the really important part, especially in the time that we live in now, because we've all become broadcasters. Like we all have a news station, a TV station in our pocket in our social media. Everybody's going live. Everybody's creating content. Everybody is curating and branding themselves all the time. People are fighting and arguing more than ever. We're connecting less than before, I believe. What's behind the content? Because the context is the human being having a human experience with all of their knowledge and their wisdom and their intentions and their emotions and their frailty. It's all in there when we're having these conversations. And the way that that relates to this particular conversation on the podcast, we're talking about Bobbito Garcia, who is one of the greats of our culture. When we talk about culture, we're not just talking about the art form. Culture is a bigger kind of like shared experience of living life together. Culture is the way that a community expresses and interacts with itself. And one of the things that's really important in maintaining a culture is the role of curation, especially when you're dealing with a subculture, a counterculture that's existing inside of, alongside of, and sometimes has an adversarial relationship with the dominant mainstream culture. So, for example, you got hip hop. The mainstream culture does not have hip hop's best interest at heart. There is a worldview in the dominant culture that has not been good for the communities, for the people that create hip hop. And so the role of a gatekeeper, which now has a negative connotation, but the original concept of a gatekeeper in any culture is like, these are people who have earned the respect of the community because they have their finger on the pulse of what it means to be us, what our culture is, and they also can speak and act on our behalf authoritatively and say what it's not. We have a culture, but then we also have culture vultures. And especially once hip hop becomes mainstream, there are people that are like, man, if I start rapping, I can actually jump in industry that comes out of that culture and that art form. I can make a lot of money. So whether it's an artist or a record label or some sort of institution, they say like, look, we can make a lot of money from that. So now they have a personal interest in coming inside of that space and trying to benefit from it. But they don't have the shared outcomes with the community that created it, whether we're talking about racially or economically. They don't share the outcomes. And so they might not necessarily care what happens to the people who create hip hop, whose life experience and their humanity and their brilliance and joy and pain and everything else. You know what I'm saying? So the role of a curator and gatekeeper is really important because those are the people that say, this is who we are. this is what's authentic, and these other things are not. And so they're not going to be included in certain spaces. And you've always had that. Early on in hip hop, it was people like Africa Bambaataa, DJ Kool Herc. When we play these records like this in these environments with these people dancing, with this kind of talking, with this kind of sound system, this is hip hop. And some other people might do some other stuff, and that's their business. But this is hip hop. Those things are not. And honestly, when you have somebody doing that well and doing it authentically, it actually creates space for other people to be able to engage and to be able to interact and to be able to enjoy and maybe to even collaborate and contribute. But you need for somebody to be the living preservers and keepers of that message. At a certain time, we had blogs. So this role is really important. But there was a time in hip hop where Bobbito and his man Stretch Armstrong, Bobbito is a Puerto Rican brother, Stretch Armstrong is a white homie, DJ. They were the people that played underground and oftentimes independent hip hop music on the radio. And they were the ones that said, watch the documentary about Stretch and Bobbito. It's incredible. So Bobbito Garcia is somebody who has really documented basketball culture, sneaker culture, and hip hop culture in New York and done it in ways that are incredibly beautiful. I'm so happy that he's here on the podcast. He wrote a new children's book that he's going to talk a lot about. I don't need to promote much because he's a professional. So he promotes as he goes. So I don't need to shout it out at the beginning, but I'm so happy that Bobbito Garcia is on the podcast this week. We have been brought to you from the very beginning by the Zakat Foundation. ZAKAT is how we give back in the Islamic tradition. But Zakat Foundation works all over the world. They don't only help Muslims, they don't proselytize, and they work with the people on the ground. As you listen to this, go to zakat.org and just put $5 on something, put $10 on something, and know that it's going to real people that really are benefiting from the help that you're giving. And hope you enjoy this episode with the great Bobbito Garcia.
Oh, snap. What up?
Yo. What's going on, brother?
Ha. Chilla, B. Look at you, man. You got the sexy room, yo. What's going on, yo?
I'm trying to look like somebody in this world, man. I'm trying to be somebody.
Yo, you got the purple light. Like, I don't even know how to...
Like, welcome. Cucumber slice. Come on in.
No doubt. All right. I'm with it. What's good? Yeah, I've never been to Istanbul, man. I would love to go out there one day.
Oh, yeah.
Love, yo.
Yeah, you would love it out here, man. The records are crazy. The art, culture, everything just looks dope. Aesthetically, everything here is dope.
There's a festival called Istanbul 74, I believe. I don't know if you're up on them. But they brought out my man Jose Pala. He's a painter. Artist.
I've been to Jose's crib.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Nah, dear friend of mine. And so he connected me to the cats, and he was like, "Yo, they want to bring you out." And then the pandemic hit, and my co-parent, I'm her full-time caregiver, but she's immunocompromised and chronically ill. So I haven't traveled one bit during the pandemic. I haven't left New York City. Period. I haven't gone. So, when I see people overseas, I'll be like, dang, man, I used to get my passport changed every 2 years because I get so many stamps,
Yeah, man.
But now I've had the same passport, but it's all good though. I've had my fill.
Yes, sir. No, this is big, man. I've been just a fan, appreciator, supporter, admirer of yours for a long, long time. Me and BK actually met each other when he was in college radio.
Word.
And so we were listening to your tapes with Stretch Armstrong back in the 90s when we first met.
Oh, all right. That's dope.
Yeah, man. So coming from Minneapolis, I'm an MC. And the second time that I went on tour, we were in New York. We're playing at SOBs. And I met the woman that became my wife. And we've been married for 20 years and living out here in Istanbul.
Wow.
So my wife is Puerto Rican and from the Bronx. And we met at SOBs. So it's about the most hip hop situation that we could possibly have. And
I love it.
And we're converts to Islam. So immediately when I got your new book, I'm looking at it and I'm like, yo, this is for us. Like, this is for our family. And like, I couldn't wait to tell our daughters about it. And then on page 2 or 3,
word,
the main character is seeing his Muslim friends and saying assalamu alaikum. And man,
Yep,
We
yep.
were just like,
Walaikum salam.
yo, this is incredible, man. This is incredible. So I feel like in a
Thank you,
career
man.
full of just decades of service, of contributing to and documenting and really caring for this culture, this this work it feels like a culmination of it all in a lot of ways, man. Like, what does it mean to you to
Thank
be
you
able
for
to
saying.
present this to the world and to the culture in this particular time in your life?
No doubt. I super appreciate you saying that. So first of all, the title of the book is Aim High, Little Giant, Aim High. As you said, it's a culmination of my career, but it's also a departure, right? And that I've been writing since 1989
Mhm.
for various publications. The Source is where I started, but then I contributed to a lot of really small hip hop publications that didn't last. Straight from the Lip, One Nut Network, the Flavor magazine out of Seattle.
Mhm.
And then by the mid '90s, I had a regular column in Rap Pages, and then my really huge piece in Vibe, which was monthly. Moving into the 2000s, I wrote my first book, Where'd You Get Those? New York City Sneaker Culture, 1960 to 1987. Then 10 years later, I started directing films, and I did three: Doing It in the Park, Pickup Basketball, NYC, Stretch of Bobbito, Radio That Changed Lives, and then my last film, which was autobiographical, Rock Rubber 45s. And so through that, I had the mindset that was cultivated in the 90s where it was like, keep it real, represent, but also a mentality that was cultivated for me in the 70s in my childhood, which was like, be true,
Mhm.
you know, and be factual and do the knowledge,
Right.
And so throughout all the stages of my career, I'm always on some like, yo, documenting sneaker culture, documenting hip hop culture, documenting basketball culture, trying to unearth these stories and these people and these movements that aren't otherwise being represented in the avenues that I had a hand in presenting to the world. So now you arrive in 2022, and I'm given the opportunity to write fiction.
Mhm.
And Brother Ali, it was liberating
Mm.
because I have 30 plus years
Mhm.
of always like keeping it real, keeping it real, keeping it real, prior to Google. And I'm like interviewing people and fact checking
Right,
and
right,
double
right.
interviewing multiple sources to make sure that like everything is factual. And
Mhm.
then it's all of a sudden I'm given an opportunity to just be creative and write whatever I want. It was mind blowing. It was mind blowing, and so I'm thankful to the publisher, We Are Little Giants, for the opportunity, and they gave me so much rope to write whatever I wanted. They had never published a book like mine, right? They had done like four children's books prior, which were mostly like ABC books, like like V is for Vans, L is for LeBrons, stuff for like early childhood. But so I was the first book that they published that was really for preteens,
Mhm.
and I envisioned writing it for ages 7 and up. But quite honestly, like so many adults have hit me up that don't have children that are in love with the book.
Yes.
I wrote the book with the mind that it would be for parents, it would be for adults, it would be for children, and so that, because there's multiple entry points for the readers, and that's just my natural organic life, which the book is loosely based on, right? Has multiple entry points as well,
Mhm.
right? I lived in Brooklyn at the time of writing that.
Mhm.
I would take my son to the playground. There were four Arab Muslim children who were, siblings, and one was a cousin. And I would greet them, salam alaikum, and they would say, Malaikum salam, yo, can we borrow your son's bicycle? And they would be like, sure. And then my son would be like, yo, can I borrow a skateboard? And I'd be like, shukran. And they'd be like, afwan.
Mm.
And then they would look at me and be like, yo, are you, and I'm like, nah, but I've traveled to 47 countries, six continents. The least that I could do, because America has such a horrible, horrible personality to the rest of the world, the least that I can do when I go to Japan is say konnichiwa,
Mhm.
you know, matane, arigato. The least I can do when I go to Italy is say come stai, sto bene, ciao, whatever. The least I could do is learn like
Commendatore.
the minimal, yeah, learn the basic 4 or 5 words to
Right.
greet and say goodbye to people, and so, anyway, I infused those experiences into the narrative of the book. Um, and it wasn't to like, oh, I got to make this book diverse. It was just that's just who I am.
Mhm.
That's just like if you roll with me, I'm a people's person. I like for people to be seen, and the greatest response that I've gotten from this book is that young children of color feel seen
Mhm.
in the book. And for me, that's empowering for them. And it's empowering for me as a 56-year-old parent that I could provide that for my son as well. I hope that the book does damage for the next 30, 40 years and kids are still reading it, still reading it. So yeah, so that's where it's at, man. Yeah, that's where it's at.
Part of what makes it feel to me like a culmination of all the things that you've done is that we've known you as somebody that talks about and educates on and highlights and documents. And there's also a type of like positive gatekeeping for hip hop and also for
Yep.
sneakers and also for basketball. Like those are like the those three things that
Yep.
come together. But the through
Hmm.
line in all of them is that yes, hip hop is the way that we're expressing ourselves and it's the way that we're bonding with one another. It's like the campfire that we're all gathering around. But really, this thing is just showing us who we are, what community really means, what culture really means. And you did the same with sneakers and you did the same with basketball. And these are all things that the mainstream world has figured out how to commodify,
Mm.
how to reduce,
Yep.
and how to present in a way that is so reductionist that it really almost lies about and erases the people who created it.
Hmm.
But the focus that you've always had and the way that you've always presented them is the entire zoomed out picture of like these
Mm.
things are dope because they're a culture that it gives a snapshot and proof of the genius, the love
Hmm.
of the communities, the families, the individuals, the traditions, the wisdom that birthed all of these things.
100%.
And to me, this particular book and the way that you are able to bring in so many, in a lot of ways, it reminds me of Do the Right Thing. You know what I'm saying? The movie that like we
Really?
go back and look at
Wow.
Do the Right Thing
Uh-huh.
20 years later, and you're like, my God, there's, all of this, that gentrification is in this movie, and all of these different things about life are all woven into,
Mm.
a guy delivering
Yeah.
pizzas. And do you know what I'm saying? So it's like
Yeah, yeah,
this thing
yeah,
about
yeah, yeah.
a kid and his dad going to play ball and the entire journey of that and the way that their playlist comes into it and that certain parks are shut down
Yeah.
and meeting other marginalized people on the way and greeting them and
Mhm. Mhm.
there's so much that's woven all through this work. um Talk a little bit about what it means to be at that intersection. Like, you're a person that worked in radio, you're a person that worked, like you said, in media, sometimes above ground, sometimes
Mhm.
underground.
Yeah.
You also worked at record labels. I
Mhm.
mean, to be at that crossroads and to really have to fight for the fullness of the culture and the community to be seen.
Wow, that's a loaded question. That's a great one too. Yeah, I interviewed Linda Sarsour
Mm,
um when me and Stretch were doing our NPR podcast, and she really blew my mind. And she was talking about intersectionality
mhm,
in 2017, 2018, which I felt like really defined my life. And yet, we're constantly learning new language, right? I'm
mhm,
56, I'll be 57 in a few months, and I want to be improving my tongue, when I'm in my 70s and 80s, right? Like
mhm.
I'm constantly trying to learn Spanish. I've been teaching myself Spanish for like 15, 20 years now, to improve and to keep my brain sharp and to claim my culture, to claim my heritage, to claim my island. Living in New York, right? You can't avoid intersectionality,
Mhm.
but you can live in Minneapolis, live in Halifax, you can live in Copenhagen, and still grasp those same crossroads because they're within us,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And they exist without us as well.
Mhm.
And then when you have the bonding of the universe through technology, it enhances our ability to be intersectional even more,
Mhm.
right? When I went to South Africa for the first time in 2000, right? Like I had protested against apartheid in the 80s when I was at Wesleyan University, and then I was aware of the formation of the African National Congress in 1994. And, but then it's like, wow, like now I'm here and I'm seeing it, you know, in front of my eyes, right? I
Mhm.
remember the first time I went to London in 95 or 96, and I was aware of drum and bass and, hearing it in New York, I didn't really like it. But then I got to London,
Right.
the
It's
source,
totally
and I
different.
saw
Yeah, you gotta be in
black
that room.
people.
That's right. Yeah, man.
Yeah, I saw black people outside at the carnival, like dancing, and I felt the melody and I felt the bass and the sound systems, and then I was like, ding, like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
I get it, right? And so, we have experiences. We're not always able to travel, but now with technology enhancing our ability to experience life, we have less excuses to be caught up in ignorance,
Mhm.
and be caught up in limited knowledge.
Mhm.
There's a lot of knowledge out there to grasp now and pull into your life. And of course, there's an overabundance of it as well, right? So it's like it's a little overwhelming. But in my travels and in my career, I try my best to be creative, to be fair to myself, and to be fair for the communities that I represent. I'm working on a new book already, right? My third one. It's the first time I'm publicly speaking about it, but it's titled Bobbito's Book of B-Ball Bang Bang.
Bang bang. Dope.
Bang Bang. Yeah, I can't
Dope.
say it without laughing. And it's nonfiction.
Mhm.
It's another foray into my mind of experiences and travels and people I've met and, in the basketball space specifically, right?
Mhm.
Again, like I'm using my sociological perspective. I'm using my hip hop third eye. I'm using my sneaker cultural stance. And of course I'm using my b-ball like spirit to guide me through the writing. I did that when I was working in the 90s in hip hop on radio. I've done that every step of my way. Like it's a very broad spectrum. It's a very wide approach of purposely not alienating people.
Mhm.
Now we haven't always achieved that, right? In the 90s, I would say that me and Stretch had a homophobic posture with some of our jokes on the radio. Someone would say, yo, I just ate a 12-inch sandwich. And we'd be like, hey,
Hey, yo.
yo,
Right.
pause.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. And meanwhile, we were alienating the LGBTQ community
Mhm.
by being homophobic.
Mhm.
I didn't know that until someone pointed it out. And when someone pointed it out, knowledge be born. I never did the Ayo again. You know, that was it. It was done.
Mhm.
And so I think as we grow and as we evolve, I hope that we become better people.
Yeah.
And not just I'm not passing judgment on people who still do the Ayo or still are caught up in whatever, but I'm just saying for myself, I
Especially if
have
they're
my
from
own
Harlem. If you're from
standards.
Harlem, I think you have to. Like
Well,
Dame and Cam, I think that like it's just in their body. I don't think they I don't think they
yeah,
can stop.
yeah. Well, until someone they care about says,
Right.
"Look, you know what? You're hurtful with your humor,"
Right. Yeah.
and perhaps maybe they care enough about that person to be like, "Yo, I never. Let me try to be compassionate and see
Yeah.
what you're feeling from your side." In
Mhm.
which case, they could make a change. I always tell people I've spoken at Rikers Island, I've spoken at correctional facilities, universities, community centers, unhoused shelters, foster homes, you name it. And I always say, like, yo, there's never a day in your life that you can't decide to make a change for the better.
Mhm.
Whether it's perspective or outlook or, spirituality. I mean, you may not be able to If you have financial woes or emotional quandaries with your family, that takes years.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, I get that. But every single day, throughout the day, you have ability to make decisions to change for the better.
Yo, man, I'm really like pinching myself sitting here like I'm talking to Bobbito Garcia right now. Because there's a time in my career when all I wanted was to be able to have my music played on that show and to be able to go up there and freestyle whenever I want to, because that really was a really crowning thing. And he said, he got 1,000 requests to do podcasts. And he said, most of them, they just take a lot of time. You really got to take time out of your day to do a podcast because you're sitting and talking to somebody. It's not a 15-minute conversation. Like you're really talking to somebody for an hour or two, and it's a big thing, and you got to do it at a certain time, blah, blah, blah. He was like, yo, I got so many of these. But when I saw it's the Travelers Podcast and Brother Ali, I knew I had to do this one. I knew I had to take the time out. I knew I had to be ready to really talk. And that means a lot because we are doing this independently. We're not on a big network. We don't have a budget. We're not able to pay our guests to come on the show, which is what most bigger podcasts do. This is really a movement that we're curating based on the message, and you are supporting it. I say all that to say that we support the music by going out and doing shows and by selling the CDs and the tapes and the records and the vinyl. And when you stream it, we get, fractions of a penny. So there's a direct way to make sure that the time we put into making music can be financially viable. Like we take a bunch of time away to do this stuff, and we've got families and, we've got a team and all this expenses and overhead and all this kind of stuff. So when we do the music, there's a way to monetize that. With a podcast, with the learning series, with the lecture series, with the mentoring and all this kind of stuff, it's not as easy to do that. You know what I'm saying? Unless you put a big paywall in front of stuff or unless you charge crazy rates for things. And we want our stuff to always be accessible. So we put out a lot of free content. The podcast is free. We do the clips. I do homemade songs that I put on my social media for free. We do a lot of stuff for free. But for the people who really support and are part of what we're doing, so if this is a podcast that you listen to all the time and you share with people and you feel like you're benefiting from, and you realize that we're not trying to sell you all kind of alcohol and all kind of wild stuff, that happens because people are supporting it. People are subscribed to the caravan. And when you come in, there's all kind of stuff that's just for our community. So you go to brotherali.com to the join section, jump in even at the $5 level. There's a lot of rare and exclusive music, videos, speeches. There's entire podcast conversations. There's all kind of stuff, and it grows all the time. Every week we add more things to that. I actually just came across a couple things that have never been out there. There's like live shows that we've done. There's a whole series of interviews with really dope artists and people that were recorded back in the early 2000s. And this stuff has never been available before. And so we're making it available just for the people, our community that really rock with us. There's all kind of stuff that's never been available before. And we're making those things available just for the people that are really part of this. And so if you go to brotherali.com, go to the join section, jump in at the $5 a month level. We're trying to get to the place where we have at least 1,000 subscribers. We got thousands of people for whom this is your number one podcast or in your top 5 or something. What we're saying is we don't see a penny from you listening to it. So we're asking you to really make that commitment and to come and be part of building this thing. The same way you came to the shows for all those years that you did, the same way that you bought the CDs and the t-shirts and all that kind of stuff for all those years that you did. Jumping in on the caravan is our way of really building and curating and maintaining this community that supports the message and the movement and the music that we're about here. So head over there, check out all the dope stuff that we got, and thank you for supporting the show.
going back to my book, Aim High, Little Giant, Aim High, it's like, the purpose of that book was to change the mindset of children towards growth,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
The bottom line of that book
Uh-huh.
is, and the first people who read it, when I tested it, they were like, well, does Taina make the shot? Because you don't see it. It doesn't get mentioned.
Yeah, I wasn't
You
sure if
just see
I wasn't sure
Taina
if that was a
shoot.
spoiler, like in a movie. Like I wasn't sure if I was supposed to spoil it, the end, because
No, no, no.
it's definitely an artistic decision that you made to not see it.
It was a deliberate decision
Mm-hmm.
to not illustrate or not say whether the shot goes in or not.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why is because it doesn't matter.
Right. 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 Yes.
The truth of that narrative is
Yes.
that Taina finally got the courage to try.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I impart upon my son on a daily basis, because we're unschooling. We're not homeschooling. We are unschooling. We don't follow a curriculum. We don't allow him to get settled in patriarchy and white supremacy that is part of, the whole educational system.
Yeah.
And, he's apart from that. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's allowed to think freely, and he's got a liberated mind, and he's conscious already at age 9, and it's a beautiful kid, but I tell him every day, like, yo, I don't care if you get all these answers right.
Mm-hmm.
I care that you try your best and you have a positive attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Aim High, Little Giant, Aim High is about.
Yes. Yeah.
The book becomes a lot more powerful when one knows that that's the reason I wrote the book.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't made a dime on the book yet. We pressed up 2,500 copies. I got an independent publisher. We're getting blocked out of the publishing industries, outlets, because there's a stupid rule that even independent distributors won't carry a publisher that has less than 10 titles in their catalog. How can you call yourself an independent distributor when you won't even support independent publishers? Now, imagine if I was self-published
Right.
and didn't even have a publisher. My life would be even more difficult.
Yes.
Now, imagine if I wasn't Bobbito Garcia,
Yes. Right.
critically acclaimed author, critically acclaimed filmmaker,
Yeah.
Radio Hall of Fame,
Mm-hmm.
National Association of Broadcasters, take away all that. And then where am I left? I think about people who are like writing books and how difficult it is for them to sell it. And I get it. Like there's a lot of books being made, and it's overwhelming to be a shop,
Yeah.
and attempt to decide, which books should you carry,
But that's
which books should
that's
you
what
not.
you're supposed to do in that job, though, is to be the person that sifts through all of the stuff.
You hope.
And you find, and that's
Yeah.
what you have done. That's part of what you've done for this culture is listen to the tapes in the
Yeah.
box of demos at the record
Yep.
label and
Yep.
find something dope.
Yep.
Come out of that box with like,
Yep.
this one's dope. Sign this person.
Yep.
Or to go through all of
Yeah.
those people standing outside the radio station and be like, that little guy can rhyme. All right.
Yep.
All right. Come in here real quick. Like that's what you're supposed
No
to.
doubt.
That's what that role is supposed to be.
That's what you would hope.
Mm-hmm.
I pass no judgment, and I don't take it personally either.
Mm-hmm.
Like that book would have sold for you.
Mm-hmm.
That book would have changed
Yes. Yeah.
a child's
Yes.
life
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes.
if you gave it a chance.
Yes.
But we are in the midst of, a surplus of releases, and
Mm-hmm.
it's cool. I get it. Cool. I'm grateful for the people who have purchased the book,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm grateful for the bookshops that did go open arms and be like, yo, we're going to do IG Live with you to promote it. The librarians who did that for me, and I feel like, the book is going to find its way in time,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what happens with everything that I do,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like the radio show that we did in the 90s with, me and Stretch was on a little FM station to the left of the dial, worst time slot from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. But if it found its way because it was that powerful,
Right. Yeah.
Sneaker culture in the 70s, found its way. And then in the 80s, it burst out. And then in the 90s, the same thing for hip hop, the hip hop and sneaker culture kind of run concurrent with each other,
Right.
playground basketball culture, like which I grew up with. It's like it can't be stopped now. It's everywhere,
Mhm.
you know. And so, I feel like Aim High, Little Giant, Aim High might take 5, 10 years to reach its potential, maybe more, or maybe it's gonna be just that gem that's like the super underground, and I'm okay with that too. I've done enough stuff in my life that's like super under the radar that only a few people know, or a few hundred people know, or a few thousand people know, and if that's what it is. But I do hope that Aim High, Little Giant, Aim High reaches the masses, because I think it deserves it.
Absolutely, man.
Diana, the main character, deserves it.
Yes.
So yeah, so we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
One of the things that really moved me so much about the book is just the emotional intelligence and the humanity between parent and child. That when they go to the courts and they see that some of them are closed, that there's a discussion around the fact that there's going to be anger, and you don't have to pretend that you're not feeling that. There's a lot of just understanding and like talking through of emotions between parent and child. And also just the idea that like my dad has no up. So when we get to the 8-foot hoop, he likes to dunk there. You know what I mean? Just the
Yeah.
idea that like
Yeah.
dad's human. Everybody's got an ego. Everybody's dealing with all this stuff,
Mhm.
and they're clowning each other, and it feels like, you say that this is for children. It's also for adults. Did you have did you have the intent to model parenting so that parents could even see? Because a lot of us don't have our dads.
Mm.
A lot of us didn't have that type of, and we have this idea about fatherhood where fathers should always appear as stoic and strong and quiet, and as though they don't, like, there's not a universe going on inside our hearts.
Mm.
And I wonder if you had the intention to model that with the book for, because the adult that's reading that to a child is also being taught a lot about what
Yeah,
that could look like and what that could be like, those kind of conversations.
that's great. My co-parent and I, we neither of us had children prior,
Mhm.
right? Both of us knew a lot of friends who were parents. And then of course we have our own upbringings, and uh we each have our own strengths, and we have our own shortcomings, right? And so preparing for parenting was that was a heavy one.
Mhm.
And then it's like, then you're like splash, now you're parenting and you're learning along the way. And I really felt like, as a father, especially one who's the primary caretaker in our environment, there is not a lot of literature.
Mhm.
I certainly, didn't find much. Most of the blogs on the internet are like mommy blogs, mother blogs, support groups. Facebook, you're gonna find a lot of mothers, and so I've really approached the whole experience as, how would I want to be treated,
Mhm.
you know, and how do I treat others? Honesty, compassion, understanding, consistency, allowing people to see me as a multidimensional person,
Mhm.
right? And yeah, I remember having a deep conversation with my co-parent really early on, like, it's okay if our child sees us crying. It's okay if our
Mhm.
child sees us in a weak moment. Um, and so that they know that we're human. And so,
Right.
it's sort of those conversations and experiential moments with my own child, and then grabbing those and then putting them into the book. Um, the backbone of the book really is a relationship between me and my son.
Mhm.
A lot of the experiences, I mean, yes, of course, that's a creative license with a lot of stuff because it's fiction, right?
Mhm.
But a lot of it is based on our daily during the pandemic. And that was another thing I wanted to do, is like, all right, cool. Like, I'm not seeing any books about the pandemic for children, but it's not like they didn't experience it,
It's a
you
major
know?
event in their lives, man.
Yeah, and so I wanted to share something that perhaps can make them feel good
Mhm.
because there was some grand moments during the pandemic, and there's a lot of positive aspects for a lot of parents. They were home with their children for the first time ever in their lives because they, would always drop off, and some of the lessons that were learned through that. So, you know, ultimately, like I want to write a fair book, want it to be unique. It's definitely unique.
Mhm.
Ain't nothing out there like that,
Not close, yeah.
Um, in the basketball space, most of the books that I've picked up for my son have generally like about 5-on-5 basketball, team basketball, you know, uh, Michael Jordan, story and, cool. That's amazing. I love it. And my son has enjoyed those books. But I was like, yo, there's nothing about playground basketball out there. There's nothing about a child and an adult learning basketball that is outside of the realm of organized basketball,
Mhm.
right? Because if you watch my film, Doing It in the Park, Pick Up Basketball NYC, that came out in 2013, happy 10th anniversary,
Mm.
or when I was the editor in chief of Bounce Magazine, which I founded. But basically, like, there's more people who play pickup basketball in the world than play organized,
Right. Yeah.
right? We all think of basketball as like the NBA. Not we all, but I'm saying a lot of people like, oh my God, the NBA and the Euro League and all. But that's like a speck of sand on a beach.
Mhm.
The majority of people who love this sport
Right.
play it.
Yes.
Don't spectate it. They
Right.
play it.
Right. Yes.
You know, and that's what makes the sport go. And so I wanted to give that angle, open up the curtain for that in the book.
A lot of y'all are in the same season of life that I'm in and that BK is in, and we have teenage kids. And man, this pandemic was major for everybody in the world in a way that, like, in human history, I don't know if we have something as widespread and impactful as that. We had World War II, but there are places in the world that didn't even know World War II was happening. There are places in the world that don't know what TikTok is and what, it's less and less people, but there are people that didn't even know that those things exist. Everybody knew about the pandemic. The pandemic was a major life shift for everybody, and especially for our kids, for our teenagers. There's just stuff that we grew up taking for granted, thinking this will always be part of life, but it's not necessarily. And I had this experience in this last week where during the pandemic, me and my family moved to Istanbul, Turkey, because we're like, okay, if everything is shut down, we're going to really look at all of the stuff we've always wanted to do and just give ourselves radical permission to do them all right now. You know what I'm saying? And so one of them was like, we've always wanted to live in Istanbul. We've always wanted to, live in a different place, give ourselves a different pace of life and things like that. So we moved to Istanbul. When you move to a new country, especially if you don't speak the language, it takes a minute to figure stuff out. So there was a couple years where my daughter didn't go to the dentist. And so I said, okay, I'm going to look around. We found a really dope dentist. It's beautiful. Like the dentist chair overlooks the Bosphorus. And this dentist, amazing woman, she speaks amazing English, really great. So it's like, yeah, okay, so cool. We got a dentist. We're going to go to the dentist this week. But also, we decided that my daughter deserves to have access to therapy. And now we have a chance for her to do that. And there's a therapist in Istanbul that she's able to see. But one of the things that made me think about as I was spending this week going to the dentist with her, like we both went, we both got our teeth cleaned. We hadn't been during the pandemic, so it had been a minute. You know what I'm saying? And we went in there and the dentist gave us all kind of bars about, brushing and all this kind of stuff. She actually made fun of me. She was like, "You don't have to brush your teeth with the force of all mankind." Like I'm brushing my teeth too hard. My daughter died laughing because they make fun of me. I do everything super hard. But it just made me think about the fact that you go to the dentist and there's nothing weird about that. You have teeth, and sometimes your teeth have major trouble. Sometimes you might need a root canal, you might need, braces, you might need your fillings done. Sometimes you just go in for a checkup and just make sure everything is cool, and they do a cleaning, they might polish you up a little bit. But the fact that we have teeth means that our teeth need maintenance, and the same is true for therapy. What a roundabout way to say people need therapy. But I am a person who believes that everybody should have some sort of relationship with a therapist and with therapy as an idea and as a reality in our lives. That you got a mind, you got a heart, you got a soul, you have emotions. And the idea that I'm just going to take care of them myself and I'm never going to sit down with a person who's been trained and licensed and has a community and accountability. And, I'm just never going to expose myself to that. My God, the people who feel that way sometimes are people that you're like, man, you would benefit so much from just sitting and talking to somebody. So, this is one part, my urgent appeal that, like, the same way that, you probably floss just great, you probably brush just great, you probably got a tongue scraper and you might have, but you still should go to a dentist and just make sure that everything is cool and just get the help of a professional. You might be able to cut your own hair, but there's something about going to the barber. Also, with something like the mind and the emotions and the heart, it's really, really important to talk to a therapist. Not because something's wrong with you, but just because the heart deserves maintenance like everything else. I do therapy through BetterHelp.com because I don't live in America. I'm an independent artist. I'm self employed. I don't have a job. So I do BetterHelp. You go to betterhelp.com. And since you're listening to this, do BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com/travelers. And then you'll get a discount and we'll also get a little kickback. They put a little money on our books so that we can keep on doing what we do here. But you get in there and it's a full network of licensed, trained professionals that operate all over the place and they do have all these different specialties. You do a questionnaire, you figure out exactly how and when you want to meet, what you want to talk about, how you want to do it. You're in the driver's seat, you're in control. You switch your therapist whenever you want. If you want to take a break, you just pause it and they stop charging your account for a couple weeks. It's really dope. I love it. I think everybody deserves access to it. Happy to have a partnership with them. So go to betterhelp.com/travelers. Get in on this therapy journey. So you became a dad a little bit later in life, and
Me,
a lot of
later,
us,
like, I have friends that have grandchildren, you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like,
yeah, no, it's real.
I
Yeah,
was 47 with a newborn, so,
that's
yeah.
amazing. That's amazing. And a lot of us, especially in the communities, like, we have kids really young, and it's not necessarily a decision that we make. It's not necessarily like, okay, I'm going to go into parenting now. Um,
Mhm,
and so
mhm.
I just wonder, like, I'm wondering about the community of people around you, especially men, and how they informed the kind of the book that you wrote, but also the parenting that you do. So who are the people that raised you? Who are the examples that you had around you? Whether they're family people, community people, hip hop people, co-workers, associates, creative people. Like what's that
Yeah.
network been like?
Another great question, and no one's ever asked me that. So, I, uh, am thankful for some of the friends that I've had that I'm really close to who had children before me,
Mhm.
right? So, for example, Crazy Legs, Rocksteady Crew, you know, very dear friend.
Mm.
I'm a member, since 91. He put me down and,
Did you have to battle
he
somebody?
had his,
Or did you just get you just got the magic touch?
uh, uh, me and Legs, we rocked. One, I mean, I never went down on the floor, and I'm not particularly a great anything in that realm, but I know how to rock, what I'm saying? So me and him rocked and, he destroyed me and it's fine, but,
That's an honor to get crushed by crazy legs.
yeah, no doubt. Exactly. I was like tickled, what I'm saying? Like I had the cojones to jump in a circle with, against like, legs, what I'm saying? But, I got to see him parent really
Mm.
early on. And
Mm.
something he told me, he was like, yo, when I speak to my kid, I kneel down so that we're face to face. Cause he was like, otherwise, I'm this big, strong diesel cat. And if I raise my voice or if I get upset and I'm like looming above him, it's intimidating.
Yeah.
So I try to look him eye to eye so that, you know, he can respect me, but also not necessarily fear me, you know. And that, that was like a jewel that I was like, all right, cool, check.
Mhm.
Book. You know, Rich Medina is another one who I've watched parent his kid, for years now and saw how he would just spend like casual time with his kid. That always struck me like the manner in which, and I don't want to go into detail because that's their personal life, um
Mhm.
but yeah, I mean, those are two examples of people who are really well known, right? Rich is part of the originals with Clark Kent and Stretch Armstrong and Tony Touch and T Nice and travels the
Mhm.
world and the
Mhm.
progenitor of Afrobeat in like US clubs and being that person who like carries it forward to introduce it to new audiences. And yeah, he's a beautiful dude. He's a very dear friend of mine. But I don't parent the way that they parent, but it's like I extracted like positive things. It's like, oh, okay, cool. I like that. I like that. And then, I kind of like piece my own experiences with my father, who he had a lot of issues that he had to deal with as a man
Mm.
and issues to deal with as a parent. But there's, one thing he told me when I was a kid, the first time I was tasked with cleaning dishes. I thought I did a great job. And he said, yo, you didn't wipe the counter. You didn't get the crumbs out the catcher in the sink. You didn't dry the dishes afterwards. Yo, he told me this when I was 7. He said, if you're not going to do a job right and all the way, don't do it at all. And yo, I took that jewel to this day, yo, 56. You see anything that
Mm,
I've
mm,
done,
mm, mm,
filmmaking,
mm, mm.
radio show,
It's
books,
thorough,
you know what I'm saying?
very
You ask
thorough.
you ask your man BK
Yes.
how long it takes for me to respond to his emails. You know what I'm saying? Like how thorough I am with
Mhm.
communication. That's just across the board. You know what I'm saying? I get like 100 DMs a day.
Yeah.
I manage doing it in the park. I manage stretching Bobbito. I manage Rock Rubber 45s. I got a tournament that's played in 30 international cities, FC 21 All World. I manage my own handle, Cool Bob Love. I manage, then it's like TikTok, Patreon, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. It's like, oh my God. Then I got emails, But you know what? I try my very best. Not 100%. I try my very best to respond to every single DM. Yo, Bob, listen to my demo. Yo,
Mhm.
I'm unavailable to listen, but I wish you the best of luck with your music.
Dope.
You know, I can't do nothing for you. It's not like the 90s where you sent me a demo and I could get it on me and Stretch's radio show. I could write about it in rap pages, maybe play it in Vibe, put you on an unsigned artist showcase at the Eurekan or
Right.
Lyricist Lounge. Nah, I can't do that no more. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I'm not the
Yeah.
patron saint of unsigned MCs in this day and age, you know, but I afford them the respect to be like, yo, you thought of me for your music. So I write unavailable to listen, but I wish you the best. I know that by heart
Yeah.
because I've typed it so many times. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, I wish you the best of luck with your music. Be
Yeah.
peace. And I mean it sincerely, like peace, like positive vibes. Be and a lot of times, 9 out of 10 they'll be like, yo, wow. Thank you for responding. I've sent it to 30 MCs from the 90s and DJs, and none of them responded. So I'm glad that I do that.
Yes.
1 out of 10 will be like, yo, that's messed up. Take it, oh, yo, how come you won't listen to, I don't have to explain to you, B. I
Mhm.
have no, I've done that. I did that already. I listened to 100
Right.
demos
Right.
a week during the 90s. Do the math. 100.
Crazy.
Because remember, some
Yeah.
people would send an album, some people would send a demo with 3 songs. Then there's 12 inches, independent releases, mailing lists, promos. It was overwhelming, but I did it. I took the time out.
Yeah.
And that's why me and Stretch's show was so dope. you know. But I mean, bottom line, I lost my train of thought. Is
You were talking about the thoroughness from your dad
My
saying if you're
father
gonna do,
said to be thorough, and so the way I
yeah,
parent, is I'm
mm-hmm,
thorough with my son.
mm-hmm,
I asked him the other day, "Is my word bond with you?" He didn't know what that meant. So I was like,
yeah. Your word is your
"Does
bond, and your
Papa
bond
keep
is your
his
life,
word?"
and yeah, and you give your life before
Yeah.
your word should fail.
I said, "Does Papa keep his word?" If I say, "Yo, I'm gonna come back in 20 minutes," do I come back in 20 minutes? Yeah, I'll come back in 20 minutes. I'm accountable, and I think like those are the things that, like, my son has tools already
Mm-hmm.
that are preparing him for adulthood in an uncanny way, that I'm grateful for. But, the book, writing the book, Aim High, Little Giant, Aim High, is a tool
Mm-hmm.
for him. You know, him hearing my interviews, because I do them out of the crib and we unschooling him. He's here. He's on the other side of this wall. You know, he listens.
Mm-hmm.
He hears what I say,
Yeah.
you know. And so that's another form of parenting. He sees my joy in being myself. He gets to see me DJ on twitch.tv/coolboblove. He watches me record my sets for Apple Music Hits.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's beautiful, man. It's beautiful. When I was a kid, I used to see my father play the vibes in the house,
Mm.
you know, and then he would take me to the goat and we would shoot jump shots together. I see how happy he was. He was in his element, realizing that early, like, wow, like if I'm in my element, I can find joy, and if I share that with my kid,
Yeah.
then perhaps he can search for that, whatever his joy is,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And that's another message in the book, Aim High, Little Giant, Aim High. Like the father tells Diana, yo, you don't gotta be me.
Right. Yes.
You be yourself.
Yes. That's right. Yeah.
Now that Ali was a specific message to other parents, because I coached high school basketball,
Mm-hmm.
I coached college basketball, I coached preteens, I've coached every level, you know, and there are some parents out there that are really mean to their children
And they're trying to live
on the
vicariously through
court.
them. And it's like, you're a projection of my
Yes,
ego. You're not a projection of my
yes,
ego. You are from the creator
yes,
directly. And I'm
yes.
I'm a loving caretaker.
Yep.
And I'm just blessed. I'm blessed to be part of this. But yeah, you are your own person.
Yeah, no doubt. I can't say it better than that. So, it hurts when I see that,
Yeah.
and I pass no judgment. In my older years, I'm really trying to be non-judgmental, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I in my personal view, I don't think that's the way to parent. That's not how I want to parent my son. My son doesn't have to be Bobbito. On social media, people don't even know I have a child.
Mm.
So I don't want strangers ask me like, "Yo, how's your kid?" And or like, I don't post photos of him, and I don't
Yeah.
want people to recognize him. Yo, little Bobbito. Like, nah. He ain't got to be little Bobbito. Let him be him.
When my son was little, he's extremely gifted, way more naturally gifted than me. Like I had to work and I
Mhm.
had a lot of great teachers and stuff, but he's really naturally charismatic and musical and gifted, and he's got a good look and the whole thing. And yeah, I put him in. He's in, MTV commercials and all this kind of stuff, and he spit on a mixtape that we did. And then
That's dope.
at a certain point, he got, and I had him when I was 22. Like I was just telling him
Mm.
the other day, like, just so you know that I was your age when I had you. So
Mm.
all the mistakes that I made, whether you're aware of them or not, just like
Yeah.
I'm here to acknowledge all those mistakes. I probably don't even know what half of them are,
Yeah.
but just
Word.
also
Word.
understanding that I was your age when I had you.
Mm.
But then when he started really making music, I know that he really struggled because in Minneapolis, especially, everybody knew me and everybody knew him as my son.
Yeah.
And so for a while, he had to make music he was like, I'm trying to make music that's the opposite of you.
Mm.
I only use 808s. I only rap about negative stuff, no consciousness, no break beats, no chopping up, like none of that. Like and I mean, his stuff had devil horns and like, it's
Wow.
just like, man, this is not going to be the Chuck D hour, man. This is going to
Yeah.
be,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, man. And it's real, and it's like exactly to what you're saying. And it's interesting too. You talk about like people giving us advice. So Chuck gave me advice really early on because he knew I was touring a lot, and he said, when you go
Mhm.
on tour, always tell your family when you're leaving, like as early in advance as you can, and then tell them when you're coming home.
Yeah.
And don't leave a minute before you say you're going to, and don't come back a minute later.
Mm.
Like, so that they know
Mm.
that you're not just out running around, that that they're a part of this, and that accountability that you have to them at least gives them some indication that this is about y'all.
Dope.
And so it's really, that's another reason why culturally people like you are very important, that we're able to see what it looks like for somebody to do that continuously. And the fact that you can still find new ways to contribute and new ways to express and new ways to create, new ways to teach. It's really dope, man. It's really dope. So thank you for your sacrifice, and thank your family, man, also for all the sacrifices that they make so that you can, how like, you see a service person on the plane, like someone will stand up and give them their seat and be like, thank you for your service. This is culturally, thank you for your service.
Thank you, V.
Yeah. Much love, brother. Much love, man. Peace, bro. Special thanks to the legendary Bobbito Garcia for being so generous and gracious with his time and expertise and insights and really just with himself. Make sure to check out the book. It is incredible. I'm so grateful to have that and to be able to share it with my children. I think you will too. Go to brotherali.com and sign the mailing list and get down with the caravan in the join section. You'll have immediate access to all sorts of rare and exclusive music and videos and lectures and conversations on the podcast and all sorts of things that we've just collected and curated over time. Really dope, really beautiful stuff. And know that you're a part of making this thing happen, making it possible, keeping it free, keeping it independent, keeping it beautiful. Social media will help if we start, promoting arguments and stuff like that. It's just not what we're about. This is the algorithm era, and to play the algorithm game, being provocative and controversial and all that stuff always seems to win. And it's not that we have any shortage of opinions that could be seen as controversial, but what me and BK want to do is really promote the connection, promote the healing, promote the bonds amongst human beings, because we think that's where the medicine is. So that's what we're about. And your support is really, really important. We realized when we were coming up doing the music thing together that you can get on a record label and they can make sure that your music's all over the place, but they like certain images and they like certain messages and they like certain lifestyles and they like to promote certain ideas. And it's just like, well, that's not what we're about. No hate, no shade to anybody that's doing that, but that's not what we're about. And that's not what we want to look back on our lives and say that we put into the world when the microphone was in our hands. And so in order to do that, we need support from the people that listen to this thing and the people who actually want to take part in promoting it and in making it a reality. So when we did that with music, we traveled all over the place and we were able to sell concert tickets and t-shirts and CDs. In podcasting, we got merch and it's dope. If you go to brotherali.com, there's a merch section. You'll see the merch is really, really dope. Shout to my man, Mark from Medina Hip Hop, who did the stamp logo. We got dope stuff. But the best way to support this thing and to keep it going and also to have access to all the things that are just for the community is to go to brotherali.com in the join section and get down with the caravan. Much love to Amna Mirza, Mansour Panawala, all the people that help keep this show going, that helped launch it. And special thanks to you. Travelers Podcast is produced, edited, and really made happen by my man BK1, Brendan Kelly. And it is a production of Travelers Media. Love you all. Talk to you next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.